Okay, Daniela, we are recording now. You might have seen a little red button at the top of the screen. Come on. So, while that red button's on, obviously we are recording our voice and obviously the images that you see on screen. So, this is the job specific induction, all about apprenticeships really, and this is the first part of the job specific induction, which we'll be talking this afternoon all about the recruiter role. Okay, so this is the whole agenda for all of the job specific induction, but of course we've split this up into two for the purposes of this Skype meeting this afternoon. So first of all, we're going to start talking about the staff training education program, and that's what we call our STEP, so GPSTL's STEP. So that's all about how you're going to develop within your role as an LRC, and we're going to look in more detail about different things that you'll be working towards to help with your development. We're also going to be looking at how you're advised as a GP employee, and be looking at the different personnel that feed into your progression and successes within your role. And then the remainder of our session today is going to be looking at the LRC role, or really about a recruiter role. We do ask assessors to attend this section of the job specific induction as well, and that's because they've got a responsibility themselves to recruit starts as well. They have a target as well as the LRCs. So they also need to know about employer engagement, induction, and the process of the initial assessment with learners. So we're going to be looking at that. And then next week, obviously you don't need to attend this, there'll be the second part of the job specific induction where we'll be looking at the assessor role and looking at their responsibilities within that role. And then after that, what happens next, what happens after this job specific induction. So we're going to start looking at the staff training and education program, in other words, our STEP. So there's an actual step, if you like, for every role. So it's job specific. So there's a step for me, there's one for your manager, there's one for an administrator. So what the STEP actually shows is different career pathways that's relevant to that particular job role, and it shows obviously personal and professional development. I did actually send you this morning in an email. I'm not sure if you can see that in an email. It's 2 pages, and it has a list of all of the training modules and qualifications on the left hand side, and then in the center of the document it's got like little ticks, and it's got like that sort of shows areas of priorities, really what you need to complete, and it's also got time scales of when you need to complete these training modules by. So we have the non-accredited training sessions. There's going to be all of our STEP modules have all been revised because of the changes to the new standards, and obviously because of endpoint assessment, etc., and the requirement for us to record off the job training with learners. A set of new documents have been released, so there's going to be new training sessions around that, so all staff will be attending those training sessions to make sure everybody's, as I said before, comfortable and familiar with the documentation and what to do with that. Anything that changes or updates, you know, we do ask people to attend refreshers, but again, as I was mentioned before, these sessions are so different now that because of the documentation and the different processes, we'll be inviting everybody to attend, all existing staff as well. With regards to the accredited training that are on the steps, those have been selected that are specifically around the individual job roles and the professional development around that, those responsibilities within those roles. So for the recruiter role, there's advice and guidance. You might have noticed that on there. There's the review health and safety in the workplace as well. That's an accredited qualification. And then again, they'll have target achievement dates for that and sort of priorities, which ones you need to complete first, etc. So as you have a target for starts within your job role, you also have a sort of a target, or it's a performance matrix, to make sure that you complete all of those activities within the step. And as your staff development coordinator, myself and Dawn will help you achieve that, along with your manager as well. So we'll help you ensure that we meet all those timescales within that step process with you. At the end of every course that you attend, there'll be a course survey coming out to you. You might have already had one from what you've done with Judith so far. So you'll get an email with a link within the email asking you to complete a survey of the course that you've attended. It's like a little ticky box, so it asks for a score. You can put some comments as well if you want to comment, if you've got any suggestions on how something can be improved, or indeed if you've got any other issues where you may need some more information about that topic, whatever that course has been about. The course surveys are anonymous, so the person that's delivered the training with yourself won't know who said what. The only thing that we are informed of is if on the very last part of the survey, if you say that you need some more information or support with that, we get a note back to us to say that individuals need some support or more information about it. But that's all we know about it. At the end of you attending every course, you'll get a certificate. So for instance, your job specific induction today, you'll get a certificate after today, and also for the inductions that you've attended with Judith. So there'll be it just shows that you're up to date with things. And part of the staff development coordinator's role as well is to monitor the achievement of the step process. So we've got a database with every member of staff on it, and it sort of tracks what is planned for you, specific dates and things that you've already achieved. So it's like it's a staff record really of where you're at within your development. So we keep a track of that. The certificate gets sent to your centre, and then it's put in your staff development folder, and again just to show that you're keeping up to date with everything. Okay, another thing that I sent you in an email this morning, Daniela, was a 4-week job-specific training plan. I'm not sure if you've seen this before. Have you seen this before? It would have been a completed one.
Yeah, I saw it on my first day with Rebecca.
Oh, right, yes. So she's gone through some different activities, and so have you got that in your possession, so you know what you've got to do or what you've done?
No, I don't think I have a copy of that.
You've not got a copy? Okay. Before somebody starts with us, the manager completes one of these training plans, and there's a different one for every job role, and sends it to head office, and then we usually get a copy of it, and we store it within our files to show that there's some structured training in place for you. Ideally on your first day, and it sounds like this is what's happened, Rebecca will have maybe shown your plan to you to say this is what's going to happen over the next few weeks. So I might have a copy of it. I could send it to you. It's probably out of sort of time scale now, because we're sort of past 4 weeks, I think, aren't we? When did you start then?
On the 16th.
16th of October. Yeah. So you might have already completed some of these things, but I'll have a look after our meeting today, and if I can find it, I'll send that on to you. I also sent you this morning a training needs analysis, or a TNA, and that helps us sort of gauge where you're at now. So if you can fill that in after our session today, that would be great. Okay. I'd normally get you to finish if it was in person. I would probably do it now, but it's probably easier if you do that afterwards. So that's really that's really for us to see if you have any qualifications already. So I mentioned before about the advice and guidance and the review health and safety in the workplace. If you've got anything like an equivalent, or you actually hold those qualifications, then you can put that on the training needs analysis, and then this can sort of update our staff development records then to show that you've actually completed that. And if you do have anything like that, and you put that on the training needs analysis, we just need copies of your certificates, really, again, just for our records. If there's something that's you've completed that's not listed, even if you think it's not initially relevant to your role now, I would still advise that you put it in, jot that down of what that qualification or training is that you've completed, because you never know in the future. In the future, that it might be something that might be, might be needed in the future. So, pop that down. There's some space in that document, and then once you finish that, if you can scan that back to me, I will remind you when I send you the slides at the end of today's session. But that would be great. Okay, is that all right, Daniela?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let's have a look at advice and guidance now. So how you're advised as a GPSTL employee. Okay, so we've got a 3-stage approach. Before you started with us and you came for your interview, you would have been asked to do an initial assessment. So some LRCs just do ICT and English, but some unfortunate people are asked to do all of them. The assessors have to do all 3, so they have to do maths, English and ICT. So can you remember doing that in your interview?
Yeah, I think I did the maths and the IT.
All right. Okay. Well, again, we should have copies of that on our records. And there's 2 reasons why we need to check that. Obviously, you need to be at a certain level to be able to function within your job role. So you need certain skills to be able to, to actually do your job, really. And also, particularly important for assessors, we ask them to do these initial assessments, is to see what level they're working at, because they actually need to be at a certain level so that they can support learners as well, through their qualifications for maths, English and ICT. So those are the 2 reasons why we ask everybody to do that before they start. And hopefully you've seen your job description, so you will have been advised on your essential and your desirable qualities of being an LRC. Have you seen your job description?
When I applied for the job, yes.
Yeah, all right. Oh, it's a bit scary sometimes, because when I get to this bit, I usually ask the same question, and some people say, "Oh no, I've not seen my job description." I'm thinking, "Oh dear, you're in the role and you don't know what you're doing yet." But
yeah, I saw it. I think when I got my contract.
Yes, you saw it then in the pack that's sent to you. All right, that's good. Okay, and then when you start with us, it really, it's a bit out of sync, because it's that time of year where we don't get a lot of people joining GP, because it's a short month, coming into December, it's a little bit of a short month, and it's a little bit quiet for starts as well. So it's a little bit cautious with recruitment of staff. So, but normally the 3-day inductions are usually over more or less a month. So you'll have your first day normally with Judith. That'll be the generic employee induction. Then it'll be Paul between week 1 and 2, and then there'll be myself or Dawn, who would be doing the job specific induction, and that's usually about within the 4th week of you starting. So a little bit out of sync at the moment with that, but again, Paul is going to be coming next week, you say, so that's great. So again, advising you of different things there, because Judith is all about the generic aspects of working in GP. I think she talks about your timesheet and your expenses and electronic communication protocols and things like that. I mentioned before about Paul. He talks about all of the products and services that we have in GP, and again how to sell those, really. And you'll enjoy the session with Paul. He's quite jolly in his delivery. And of course, the job specific induction is specifically for either the LRC role or the assessor role. So, we cover both aspects of that. And then, obviously, the training needs analysis is to really advise us, I suppose, to find out what actually we need to sort of put in your step, your program, really identifying what you already hold or have or are working to, and what you need to do really to be successful as a recruiter. I just mentioned about the 4-week training plan again. The items on that training plan, again, will start you off in the right direction and develop you within your role. Obviously, the step sessions, the modules that I've mentioned before, they'll sort of reinforce those things and activities that you do early on in your role. So, have you been out already and shadowed anybody, Daniela?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you been out with an assessor?
No, I haven't been out with an assessor, just 2 LRCs.
Oh, 2 LRCs. Okay. So it would be great if you could go out with some assessors and arrange that. So next time you have your one-to-one, perhaps that might be an idea to bring that up, because that is also on that 4-week training and action plan, that you need to go out with an assessor. And I think it's just really so that you can see what happens after, your part when you're recruiting learners. So it's just on the assessor 4-week training and action plan. It's down for them to shadow LRCs as well. So again, it's a team effort, I think. So it's good if you can see the whole process, from you signing somebody up to actually that first visit with an assessor. So that's great. So again, probably bring it up in your one-to-one, but I'll look for your 4-week training plan, and I'll just see whether we have that on a record, and I'll send that on to you. So I mentioned about the STEP programme. Also, I'm not sure if you've had an initial appraisal yet. This will be like where they set your targets. Is it Phil Cass who's your direct manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So have you met with Phil yet? Has he been to see you, or?
I met him when I went to Stockport, and he's been.
Right. Okay. So he'll be, I would imagine it's going to be him. He'll be doing an appraisal with you. If you've not got any plans for that, it will be quite soon. Just really to set some targets with you, really, within your role as an LRC. He'll also be supporting you with your career path and how you can develop within your role. He's doing some training at the moment. I attended a training session with him last week when he was talking about sales. So he had the assessors in. I'm close to the Halifax office, so he was there, and I thought, I'll go and tag in as well. So he was talking to the assessor team, and about some tips on sales techniques, basically. But I mean, he was sort of saying, well, don't sell. He was sort of going down another angle. Don't sell, inform. It's the LRCs, are the salespeople. So he was sort of giving some suggestions on how they can sort of recruit progressions and offer other services that GPSTL offer as well. So I know he's going round, so maybe you'll see him again when he's next doing something like that in Greenwich. Yeah. Internal and external training opportunities. Again, internal training, just mentioned that before. You'll also have sort of sales meetings as well, with usually it's region wise, but also company wide as well. And sometimes there are opportunities for external training. Sometimes there's things going on out in your actual region that you can tag in, where it's maybe local commerce meetings. Some LRCs in some regions get involved in that. I'm not sure what the opportunities are around the Greenwich area, whether that's something that you would be involved in as well. So you get opportunities for that. Any external training, if it's free, it's an actual cost to GP, even though it's a free course sometimes. So we have to make sure that people who go on this training, it's going to be worthwhile for them. And the reason why if it's still a cost to GP, because obviously we'd have to pay for your travel to get there, and obviously any expenses that's incurred with that. And again, we have to make sure that that's right, and that's another reason why we have course evaluations as well, to make sure that if anybody else was to go on that training, then it is going to be worthwhile. It's going to make a difference to you and your role. So those things may come up, but as I said, usually external training, particularly for the LRCs, is more on a local basis a lot of the time. And then the third stage, which is ongoing, how you're advised, is again, we have annual appraisals and we review people's targets. By the way, I'm trying not to abbreviate. I know there's a lot of acronyms in a lot of the slides and paperwork that you've seen, but there's going to be an updated glossary coming out to all the staff so that you can see what these abbreviations actually mean, because it's a little bit of a minefield, I think, when you join and you think, what does that mean? Okay. Again, we continue to support you with your career path, and there's an actual best practice guideline. There's one for an assessor and one for an LRC that I can actually send you as well. And again, there's best practice mentoring and support. So again, I'm hoping that you are working with a mentor. I'm not sure if anybody's been allocated to you. Would that be somebody that's in Greenwich, or might it be from another centre for the LRC role, Daniela?
I'm not sure if I have a specific mentor.
No. Who have you been working with then? As in,
Oh, Nigel, he's one of the other new LRCs.
Right, okay then.
Yeah, he started not too long before me.
That's right. I haven't met Nigel, because when Nigel started, it was Dawn that actually was visiting Greenwich that month, so I've not met him myself.
Oh, okay.
And of course, Phil, once he gets in contact with you, then I'm sure he'll put you in contact with other people as well in the company, if you need to get in touch with other people as well. Maybe they've got other experiences working with different larger organisations, maybe that's present in your region, and maybe he can support you with that. And then we've got something called quality assurance support and OTL activity. OTL is observation of teaching and learning. You mentioned before that you've met up with Brian Nelson, and he's the person that observes you. Has he observed you at all, or has he just had a session with you, Brian?
Oh no, we had a session I think on Friday.
Oh right.
Friday or Thursday, and it was to do with health and safety vetting paperwork.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
The health and safety vetting. Yeah, so he supports you in that way. He's the health and safety officer for the company. But he also will come out to observe you. He observes all of the LRCs. Not so soon, he'll let you get more established in your job role, but he comes out and observes you to check that you're doing everything right, basically, but also to give you some support out there, because usually you're on your own, aren't you? Nobody's there with you to check what you're saying and what you're doing is right. It's a little bit daunting, I think, of being observed by somebody else, but I think a lot of people, including our assessors that also get observed, find that the feedback is welcome, because again, as I said before, you don't know sometimes if you're doing something right or wrong, because you're the only person that's there, really. I suppose the only feedback you get is if you've not completed a form correctly. If it gets central admin and you've missed something out, I suppose that's the only initial feedback you get. So it's good for somebody else to be there. From that, there'll be we sort of allocate grades to people from the OTL.
Oh,
So
okay.
we look on the same sort of rationale as Ofsted. So so if you get a grade 1, obviously that's outstanding. And we aim for all of our staff to be at least a grade 2. So that's something to aim for. And following, if you get a grade 1 or grade 2, you'll be recognised. And usually in Sharon's quality improvement meetings, she will issue some certificates to those individuals that do actually get a grade 1 or grade 2 to recognise that how they're performing is to a quality standard, which is great, and you recognise through that in that way. Also, in Dave Martin's meetings, have you met Dave yet, Danielle?
Yes, we had no worries. We had a meeting with him last week Tuesday.
Okay, so also through Dave Martin's operations meetings, there'll also be an opportunity for people to be recognised for their contribution to the team as well. So he normally issues a certificate if people have put individuals forward for going above and beyond their role, really, and supporting the team in many different ways. And you can be recognised in that way. I just mentioned before about the external training opportunities and also individual development through external support networking. Again, it all really depends on your role and maybe the sector. You might be involved in a certain community groups. It might be to do with local commerce, as mentioned before. Some of the assessors might get involved in other partnership meetings for sector-specific areas. But again, that could be something that you could develop by attending those. And peer networking and best practice, I mentioned before about the sales meetings and meeting up with, again, your peers. I'm not sure what the plans are for company-wide sales meetings, and if you are going to be travelling to Stockport or you're going to be part of that networking, because I'm not sure what the plans are moving forward with that. But in the past, LRCs from Greenwich have travelled to Stockport and joined that company-wide sales meeting. Don't think it happens every month, but at least you can, network with people that are in the same role as yourself, and sort of develop in that way. Okay. So what I would probably advise that you do is that step document that I emailed to you in an email this morning. Have a good look at that, because if there's something that you think, actually, I need that information now, or I need that support now, or even if you've been on a training module or attended something, you think, yes, I attended it, but I wasn't quite sure, I think I need to speak to somebody, or I need a bit more support in that area, please speak out and ask for that, because everybody within GP are busy. You're busy, everybody else is, and I think sometimes if you've got a problem, you think, well, can't bother that person, I've already asked them twice, I can't really ask for help here because I'll feel silly or whatever. Please don't. Please ask for any help, because everybody's sort of getting on with their own responsibilities. It doesn't mean to say that they're not going to support you, and I'm sure you've seen that in Greenwich. I'm sure you've seen the support that maybe other people will offer to you as well. So please ask. Even if you think, well, I'm not sure who to ask, you can email me or Dawn. We've worked for the company long enough to know that even if we can't answer your question, we usually know somebody who can answer your question, so we can refer you to that person. Okay, we got any questions on what I've talked about so far, Daniela?
No,
You're all right?
So far. Yeah.
Okay. So this on screen at the moment, this actually shows you who sort of feeds into your development within your role. So I've put some names to this. So at the top of the screen, we've got the vice president, and that's Dave Martin, of course. So he monitors everybody's performance in the company. So he knows, obviously, the successes of the recruiters. You know how many starts you've got on. They'll also look at the performance of all the assessors as well. So how many, usually in the meetings he'll talk about people that are out of funded, or he'll talks about learners that haven't been visited for at least 8 weeks. He'll look at other statistics as well, performance statistics, and he looks at obviously the bigger picture. He gets that information off MATAS, our database, and obviously from eTrack, where the assessors store all the information about the learners. So again, he's there identifying that. Moving to the right, we've got the Director of Quality, and that's Sharon Simon, who you said you met not last week, the week before, and she talks about again the quality of everybody's performance within their roles. So she monitors the outcomes of these observations that I just mentioned as well. And if there's any common themes, she feeds that back to the staff development team, and so if we need to put something in place to sort of plug the gap where people are struggling, or maybe they lack a bit of confidence or knowledge in an area, then she feeds that back to us, and then that we put something together, and then that will come out to the teams where needed. She's also part of the Quality Forum, as Dave Martin is as well. So they meet quite frequently throughout the year, and they talk about different things that's happening within work-based learning, and how we need to sort of move forward and progress with things that are happening within the sector. So they look at, you know, if anything needs changing or amending, on sort of do succession planning. So they look at you know, things that need to be sort of embedded to improve the performance and the quality of our provision within GP. So also part of the Quality Forum, it's where individuals like yourself have made suggestions. So if somebody thinks, well, oh, I've found a really good resource that's going to help our learners, it's great, then that can go to Sharon. Sharon can look at that, she can get some advice from the people that know all about that particular sector, and if she agrees, yes, it's a really good resource, then it will go on an approved list of resources. Also, if people think, actually, these new forms that have come out, one of the forms we don't need, you know, we've got other processes that we could use instead of that form, then again, you feed that back through your manager. That will go back to Sharon, and again, she can take that to the Quality Forum and talk about that with Dave. So a lot of feedback that comes from you know, our practitioners, people that are actually working within the job role, does actually get spoken about in the Quality Forum sometimes. You know, they do listen to people that are working with new processes, documentation, and if anything needs changing, adding, taken away, then, you know, that's the place for it. Because we're a large company, you know, we can't be doing individual things. Everything's got to be consistent, you know, throughout the company. Moving on to the IQA manager and internal quality assurance, that's more for the assessors. So the assessors are supported there by a local IQA, so our internal quality assurance person. In your region, it's Tina Manuel. So she'll support people locally within Greenwich and the London office, and assessors also get supported by a different RQA that's located somewhere else in the company, so it's an impartial relationship, if you like. So all the assessors are supported by those individuals, and the IQA manager, she's called Eileen Moran, if you hear of her name. She's based in Stockport, and she's the manager of all of the regional and local IQA people. So Tina Manuel, I believe, reports to Eileen, who's based in Stockport. And then moving to the bottom, we've got the Regional Operations Director. So I'm not sure whether that would be, is that Rebecca for yourself, Daniela? Is she your Regional Operations Director?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because, I believe it's Rebecca.
Right, because we've got Linda O'Hara, she's another Regional Operations Director that I think covers
I think I've met both of them. It might be Linda.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused myself about that because I'm not sure who it is, but we know that Phil Cass is your line manager. Yeah. So he will be doing your appraisals, setting your targets, giving you advice on how you can succeed in your role. Is quite a new employee, Phil is, but he has got loads of experience of work-based learning, and he's already made his mark within GP, quite positively. So it looks like he's making a real contribution to GPSTL, which is great. Just talks about the staff development coordinator role. So again, there's 3 of us, myself, Dawn Wadsworth, and someone called Carol McQuarrie Watson in Devon and Cornwall. And then we've got these best practice mentors. So there'll be a list of people. Sometimes it comes from the OTL outcomes. So I mentioned before, these observations that get graded. So people that are graded a grade 1 outstanding, some of those people are on a best practice mentor list. So this list, anybody can contact these people if you've got any questions about a particular aspect of either your role or a particular sector. They are there to advise people, so you can drop people an email or you can give these people a ring if you need any support in anything. Sometimes they've been identified as specialists. So again, we've got people who are specialists in certain sectors, or it might be to do with functional skills subjects. Then again, anybody can contact these people. So it doesn't have to be within your local centre, it could be anywhere really in the company. Okay, so it's really to make sure that you don't feel alone, and there's plenty of people out there that can support you. Okay, so we're now going to look at your responsibilities as an LRC. Are we okay so far, Daniela, to carry on?
Yep.
Yep, we're all right? Okay, yeah. Great. Okay, we're just on 37 minutes, so I think we'll see where we're up to in the next, about 20 minutes or so, and then we might take a break. Okay, so this is all about your role as an LRC, and again, I've mentioned before about assessors. Assessors also need to know about the processes of recruitment, because they are also targeted to get starts, and that might include progressions as well, people who are progressing from one qualification to another one. Okay, so there's key activities as a learner recruiter. So it's employer engagement and induction. Really important that we're building relationships up with our employers, and also another key activity is to induct the learner on a programme and then complete an initial assessment. It says part 1 there because there's 2 parts to initial assessments with learners. So the learner recruitment consultant will start off the initial assessment, collecting information about them, and then when the assessor goes out, they complete the assessment, which is more specifically around the sector that they work in, so the occupational area really. So they do sort of part 2 of the initial assessment. So things that you need to be aware of is you need to make sure that you've got good planning and preparation, that you've got some good product knowledge, you're able to advise and guide your learners and employers, and you're using the right documentation, and you're able to manage that information securely and correctly really. So you're putting things in the right places, you're storing information correctly. and obviously that's processed to central admin. So let's have a look at employer engagement. So those key activities broken down now. Okay, so planning and preparation. It's important that you know your organisation. So again, Judith might have talked about your about GP, and she might have also told you about well, communications and things like that. Have you been on the website, on the GPSTL website?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see what that looks like. That's been updated as well, I believe. I think Dave mentioned it in his meeting. Know what products that you have and know the services that you can offer. So again, in more detail, Paul is going to talk to you about this next Thursday. You also need to know your customer as well. So, you know, a key thing is to know what their needs are. Make sure you've got the current marketing materials and you're not using anything that's out of date, particularly because things have changed now. And make sure you've got the correct documentation. And again, that's really important because again, there's some documents that have changed. So you need to make sure that you're not using pre-printed things that are lying about the office, because sometimes people will think, oh, I found this document, I'll copy it 100 times, and then before you know it, it's gone out of date, and we're still working with, you know, poorly photocopied documents that are, you know, sort of off an angle a bit, and you know, they don't look professional, and also they might have the incorrect information on that as well. So make sure you're professional. Make sure you're advising and providing information and suggesting solutions to your employers if they have any issues. And make sure that you're building relationships and exceeding customer expectations. Okay, because again, we want to work with employers more long term. So again, it's a little bit about better the devil you know, isn't it? So if you build that professional relationship with an employer, then we can hopefully be working with them for, you know, a long time really. It's not just a one hit with one learner. Okay, be successful. Okay, so first you might have already been aware, we talked before, just before we switched on the recorder, that you've got a brief idea about the different changes that happened from May 1st, 2017. So from that date, there was an introduction of the employee levy requiring all large employers, and those are those with a pay bill in excess of 3 million, to contribute 0.5% of this towards the cost of apprenticeship training. And of course, GPSTL fall into the bracket of an employee levy paying organisation as well. So we also have to contribute 0.5% of that wage bill. And also the introduction of employer contributions for small and medium-sized enterprise, or SMEs, at a rate of 10% of the total cost of an apprenticeship. So all the apprenticeships that their employees will be working towards, the small to medium enterprise employers will be contributing 10%. Instead of all of the apprenticeship being fully funded. So that's the big changes. And also the start of phasing out the SASE apprenticeship frameworks, and they're going to be replaced by simpler apprenticeship standards, where the assessment of an apprentice's skills and knowledge is conducted as an endpoint assessment. So there's some occupational areas that are still on frameworks, and there's a comprehensive list of which occupational areas are on frameworks and which are on standards. And I think just before our meeting today, you might have seen an email, I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, from Sharon Simon, and it's about what to do now. When you get a chance, there's all the documents that I'm going to talk about today regarding the changes from the frameworks and to standards. There's some hyperlinks within the documents you sent, so you'll be able to read, so you don't get mixed up, you know, what is actually you're going to be selling, is it standards or frameworks. So that this document will actually tell you if it's not a standard and it's currently in an apprenticeship framework, it will also give you some dates of when it swaps over, and you'll be
Yeah,
keeping
I
up to
think,
date. Have you seen that?
and we haven't. I think when Sharon came, she explained that to us, but I'm not sure we have. I'm not sure I've seen that of yet, but I
No.
do know that
Yeah.
currently I think it's the health and social care that we have as a standard. So we're no longer doing the frameworks for the health and social care. But she did say she would then send out correspondence like on a monthly basis
That's right. Yeah.
whenever there's like any
Yeah.
changes, so that we'll
Yes.
know what we'll be doing.
All right. So you've probably got the copy of that she brought out. I don't think that's been updated since she handed it out in the quality meeting. So, but she in the email that she sent out this afternoon, there's a link to that document. I think there's about 10 pages in it. Quite a thick document of all the apprenticeship standards. Health and social care obviously is one of those. Customer service is a standard as well. Retail is. I think the only major one that isn't a standard so far is the childcare.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a standard at the moment, but I think it's on its way to
Yeah,
be.
she only my last correspondence with Sharon was on
Yeah.
Friday. She sent the slides over, but I haven't received anything
All
since
right.
Friday from Sharon.
Okay. Well, I'll check my email and just see if she's missed you out for some reason, or you're not on that list. But I'll have a check. Okay. So we'll be talking about this endpoint assessment in a few slides. Okay. So I won't play this because there's a little link to a little video, and we can't actually show this in these types of recordings. So when I send you the slides, you can just click on that. It's just a little bit of a little fun video, really, when you sort of engaging with employers and making telephone calls to people. It's just a little bit of a short clip, a little fun thing, light-hearted one. I'll let you look at that when I send you the slides. Okay, so I was going to ask you to, in small groups, talk to one another about how you would approach and engage employers. But as it's just you and I, let's have a little bit of a chat before ourselves, and then we'll sort of when we get to this point, we'll maybe switch off the recorder and have a little bit of a break. So I know you say you've got some experience already in work-based learning apprenticeships. What is your sort of how do you sort of engage with employers? What's your tips, if you like, of firstly approaching them? You know, do you telephone them? Is it better in person when you're initially making contact with people?
Sometimes, obviously, because the biggest issue I've found when you're doing phone calls is kind of getting through that gatekeeper.
Yes.
So it's sometimes I try to research the employer beforehand.
Yeah.
So I tend to use LinkedIn quite a bit. So put in the kind of company put in the company name to see if anything surfaces, and sometimes you can find out different people by name who work there and what exactly they do.
Yes.
So then when calling, kind of having someone to speak to, as opposed to just saying, oh, can I speak to somebody who deals with training and development for your staff members, because then they kind of know it's a sales call already.
Yeah.
So then the receptionist or whoever picks up might try to fob you off.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've found that helps.
Yeah.
At times, or if I find a company email, so I send out an email first, and then when I call back, I just say, obviously, it's I'm calling in regards to the email that I sent. So it's kind of like I've already made the first initial step.
Yes.
To kind of meet with to approach the individual, so they kind of know who I am.
Yeah.
Hopefully that they've already read an email or seen my name attached to an email that was sent. So that's some of the approach.
Yeah, that's good. And I believe the marketing materials are currently being worked on at the moment. So that's that's your the way that you initially make contact with them via email. There'll be some mail shots that you'll be able to send out using these marketing materials. So I'm hoping that that's going to help you as well. some of the information is a lot clearer to employers, because even though there might be levy paying employers that you find that you're making contact with, some employers still don't know about the levy paying requirements, so sometimes they don't know about that, so again, it's sending them information. And I think some of our marketing materials now have been updated so that they are a lot clearer. The information that we're passing on to employers is a lot clearer for them to understand, really. Okay, so people like to approach employers slightly a little different. Some people like to be on foot, seeing people face to face, but again, a lot of employers are busy, aren't they? And I think you've got to consider their business needs and making sure you're approaching them at a time where they're not going to be dust mobbing you, really too busy. You're just not going to get a positive response, are you?
Yeah, so like I know, like with retail and like some shop-based employees, it's better to like approach them like really early in the morning.
Yes.
Or first thing in the morning, because they're not that busy. But if it's like a sports shop or a clothing shop, contacting around like 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon, it's not necessarily ideal, because that's kind of like their busiest times.
Yeah, that's right.
So you kind of want to approach them at a time whereby you can actually get somebody on the phone.
Yeah, and again, this time of year is a little bit of a nightmare for retail starts.
Yes.
Sort of coming up to December, into December, and then even the whole of January is quite difficult
because of all the sales and things that are coming up.
That's it, yeah. I know when I was an assessor, they'd sort of say, coming to the end of November, they'll say, right, I'll see you February, don't come back in until February. And of course we can't not go in for 2 months, we've got to sort of change how we visit our learners. So it could be that we use, when we're going in after, say you sign up in November, we have to sort of change what we're going to do afterwards. So where we'd normally do, I don't know, recorded discussions, let's just say that, or questions and answers that's away from the shop floor, so to speak, we wouldn't be able to do that, because obviously they're needed on the shop floor during a busy time. So the idea is that we choose an assessment approach that's a lot less intrusive, so perhaps observing them during the busy times, because that's great evidence, because if they're busy and they're working with colleagues or customers, that's good to observe, so to swap it round so it's less intrusive and you're not taking people off the job, really. So okay, so new from 2017, this is the biggest change at this stage of the process, and I'm not sure if you've seen this document. This is a service level agreement. Have you seen this before, Daniela?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, you've seen that. That's quite a thick one. So this is a legal document that will need to be quality assured by either your manager or your regional operations director. So your role will be to complete a range of information on the initial assessment with the learner, with the employer and the induction visit, so you can inform this service level agreement, and we'll look at the information that you need to collect in a little while. So for non-levy paying employers, the service level agreement is completed locally, and for levy paying employers, the service level agreement is completed by someone called Jamie Thompson and his team. And there's an endpoint assessment which shows the employer's service level agreement, and also if we're subcontracting the service level agreement as well. So, but you say you've seen this, so yeah, it's quite a thick document that's completed. Where are we for time now? Let's have a look. Where are we? Just checking my time. All right, so shall we, before I start talking about the actual paperwork, shall I just stop the recorder and we have a little bit of a break before I go into that? Is that okay with yourself?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let me just stop that recording then. Just need to show my taskbar, just one second.